in simple terms, alpha-gal is an allergy to red meat that comes following a tick bite. So you get bit by the tick, over a period of months you start to develop this allergy, so then when you reintroduce your body to red meats, you start to have an allergic reaction to those red meat foods, as mammalian products. So how is it transmitted? Here's a little graphic. If you can't see it up here, you might want to refer to your little paper, your printout. So it starts with the tick bite. So a tick will get on a mammal, like a deer, most commonly it's a deer, and most commonly it's the Lone Star tick. But what happens is that tick will get a part of that alpha-gal, the lactose molecule, on its mouth from the deer. And so then when the tick attaches to you, or us humans, it then transfers that galactose, that sugar molecule, into our bodies. And that's, our bodies consider that kind of like a foreign object. So then our immune system, over the next weeks to months, starts to treat that like a foreign object, and they want to fight that sugar molecule. So they start to build these antibodies, these molecules, to fight off the sugar molecule in our body. So after a period of weeks to months, you get a high enough levels of these antibodies that when you eat any red meat, like hot dogs, hamburgers, steak, any beef, pork, your body then reacts to this, these types of food. That reaction can be mild or severe. It just varies from person to person. It can be a rash, itching, or it can be as severe as like anaphylaxis, where you get tongue, lip, throat swelling. So it's hard to determine the symptoms just because they vary so much from person to person depending on your immune system. It is important though, after talking to some people who have this alpha-gal allergy, it is important not to cheat on your diet, because those symptoms can linger up to weeks in your body. So you can have that rash that comes and goes. You can kind of re-trigger those reactions by reintroducing that red meat to your body. So one question people commonly ask is, why doesn't everyone who gets bit by a tick get alpha-gal? Like, why is it only certain people that get this alpha-gal disease? So it's kind of, I tried to simplify it the best I could. It's kind of this equation here where one, your immune system has to be kind of prone, or you kind of have to have this DNA that is sensitive to that alpha-gal molecule, that it develops those antibodies to react to the red meat. And then two, you have to get bit by a tick that has that sugar on its mouth when it bites you. So not every tick is going to get that alpha-gal sugar when it bites, but the ones who do get the alpha-gal sugar that transfer into your body, that kind of is what triggers the alpha-gal allergy. So your immune system has to be reactive to it, and you have to get bit by a tick with that sugar on its mouth. And then that gives you alpha-gal. So where is alpha-gal found? Here, this little map here kind of shows where that Lone Star tick, which is the most common tick to transfer alpha-gal, as well as the most common areas for the alpha-gal diagnosis tends to be. It's more in the southeastern part of the United States. In Kansas specifically, if you look at our little state, it's the southern eastern, but also starting to get into the central Kansas. So that's kind of where our little town here, right here, southern eastern. So it is around where we are. So that's kind of why we're giving this presentation today, is it's on the rise and it's in our area. It's most commonly found in adults. That's because we're around here longer, we've gotten more tick bites than kids, but also we tend to spend more time in the outdoors in those wooded areas where those ticks are found. Some signs and symptoms to look out for. These are all, there's kind of a wide range. Some people, when they have alpha-gal, they just have mild symptoms to red meat. They just get a little rash, maybe a little itching. Some people get GI symptoms, so they get the nausea, the vomiting, the diarrhea after eating red meats. Some people are really sensitive, and it can be life-threatening. It can develop into like an anaphylactic reaction where they have tongue, lip, throat swelling whenever they're exposed to that red meat or the juices from the red meat. So how are you diagnosed with alpha-gal? So there's a blood test that tests for the amount of antibodies that are in your bloodstream. So that's how we get the diagnosis for alpha-gal. You get your blood drawn, and it tests for that alpha-gal IgE, that antibody test, to see if you have have those molecules that are fighting against that sugar molecule. Here's an example of what your lab results may come back looking like. So they say a level of greater than that 0.1 is considered positive. So if you're less than the 0.1, it pops up as negative, but anything greater than that 0.1 is positive. There is a range that's more of like a different classes of positive. So there's a mild reaction that's like you might have more, like not as high of molecules in your system, where it gets as high as class 6, which is very high. So there's different classes to the, if you're positive, you can either be like low, moderate, high, depending on how many antibodies you have in your bloodstream. And some tests even specify if it's to pork, to beef, those specific red meats, not just the red meat class in general, kind of more specifically what red meats. For treatment, unfortunately, there's not a cure right now for alpha-gal. If you get diagnosed with alpha-gal, it's not set in stone. That's something that we can just give you a pill and it'll treat it and go away, which is unfortunate. The biggest way to avoid getting alpha-gal is prevention. So making sure we wear bug spray when we go outside, long pants, long sleeves. Right when you get done from being outside or doing outdoor activities, make sure you're showering, checking for ticks to prevent those bites. When you get alpha-gal, if you do have the allergy to red meat, you're gonna wanna avoid those foods. It's very patient specific, so kind of find those foods that trigger your alpha-gal and try to avoid those red meats, so beef, pork. Some people even have a little allergy to dairy as well, so you wanna watch those dairy products. It's not just red meats, it's also anything that has that mammal-based product in it. So if you are diagnosed with alpha-gal, you're gonna wanna talk to your provider about it, and also if you ever start on any medications or vaccines, you wanna make sure that you talk with the pharmacist about if it contains any mammal-based coating. Sometimes the pills have a coating on it that can have some of that mammal-based product on it that can cause people to react as well. If you do have alpha-gal, when you have a reaction, if you have a rash or hives or itching, you can take medications like Benadryl or allergy medications like Claritin or Zyrtec. If you do have more severe reactions, you may have to carry an EpiPen around in order to fight off if you have like throat, tongue, lip, throat swelling, if it is more severe, okay? So foods that we educate people to avoid when they're diagnosed with alpha-gal. Like I've mentioned multiple times, the biggest one is those red meats. Unfortunately, those are my favorite foods, so that's kind of hard for some of those diets. You have to avoid deer, beef, pork, lamb, goat, so steaks, hamburgers, hot dogs, bacon, some of the best tasting food out there, you unfortunately have to avoid. We are grateful that there are a lot of products you can get to replace those. So people who have alpha-gal tend to follow they call it the fins and feather diet. So fins like fish, and then feathers like turkey and chicken. Those are all foods that people with alpha-gal are usually safe to eat. So you get turkey bacon, turkey sausage to kind of replace those red meats. Some people are sensitive. My grandma actually has alpha-gal, and she's so sensitive she has to watch like what kind of surface her food's cooked on. So if you go to a restaurant, sometimes it's important to let your waitress or waiter know. Like if your chicken has to be cooked on the same grill as steak, that can even cause a reaction if it's cooked on the same greasy stovetop as those red meats. Kind of up and coming treatments that you may have heard of in regards to alpha-gal. There are chiropractors and acupuncturists that are starting to develop their practice to kind of help treat that red meat allergy and those alpha-gal symptoms. When seeking this treatment, if you have alpha-gal, it's important to make sure that those people are board certified in kind of what they're performing on you. Make sure that it's safe for you to get that done. If that's something you want to talk to your primary care provider about, they can look in and make sure that they're board certified and kind of the procedures they're performing on you. They say that the acupuncture kind of works on the nervous system, that they use that acupuncture needle to find that allergy sensitive spot in your nervous system, and it kind of resets your pathway to help get rid of that red meat allergy for you. That's all kind of new medicine, so I'm kind kind of excited over the years to kind of see how that develops, and I hope that it's something that we'll use more often to kind of help people get rid of that allergy so they can eat all those good foods. Can patients outgrow alpha-gal? So although there's not a cure, they do say that patients are able to outgrow alpha-gal. Over the years, they say that those antibodies, although they spike when you first get that allergy, those antibodies can decrease over the years, which means that you might not be as sensitive to those red meats as you once were when you were first diagnosed with alpha-gal. In order to achieve this remission of the alpha-gal, it's important to avoid, the most important thing is to avoid any future tick bites, because the more you get bit by those ticks, the higher chance of you to kind of get reintroduced to that sugar molecule and get redeveloped into that alpha-gal. Strictly avoiding those red meats, so try not to eat those red meats so your body has time to kind of regroup and get those antibody levels back down. And then when you do want to try to introduce, if you feel like you're ready to introduce the red meats, it's important to do it under medical supervision. Kind of ease in slowly, let your primary care provider know so they can get you an EpiPen on hand, so if you do react, you're ready, and just to kind of keep an eye out and have it be more medically guided. So, in summary, I hope that everyone, I hope you guys all got this little handout. I tried to make a patient handout, so if you want to take it home and refer back to it, you can kind of look over those key points we talked about today, about how it's transmitted by a tick bite. Most commonly, it's that Lone Star tick that transmits that sugar molecule into our body. Signs and symptoms can be a wide variety. It can be a rash, itching, and GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, or it can even lead to some anaphylaxis, which is tongue, lip, or throat swelling. To test for it, it's a blood test. You can talk to your primary care provider about if you have had a recent tick bite and have noticed some of these symptoms to see if you would be a good candidate to get this blood test done. And I know that our local health department also does the blood test as well. And then treatment, like I said, the biggest thing is to avoid those foods, that red meat that triggers those reactions, but also hopefully our medicine keeps up and we can get some better treatment options in regards to acupuncture and treatment procedures like that.